Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, so today we need to talk about Stellar Crown. Stellar Crown it's either about to come out or just come out, depending on exactly when you listen to this. But the point is, the pre-release. It's not actually out, the pre-release is starting. You know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. Point is, we've got Stellar Crown, and Stellar Crown is a good set. Stellar Crown is a set about which you should be pretty excited, and if there's a new set coming, we should probably do a top 10 list of the best cards from the new set. Be kind of weird if we didn't, really, wouldn't it? Excellent. So let's start off at number 10 with Majestic Tree. Now, this is a weird one, Majestic Tree, because I think there is a huge amount of potential. And look, this set's legal over in Japan right now. We're seeing this metagame seeing play in Japan as we speak. And Majestic Tree, it's out there. But it is very much seeing a little bit of play here and there. It is an A-Spec card, it is a stadium, and it basically lets you search your deck to evolve for a Pokemon that would be able to evolve anyway. And you can go up to a stage 1 or straight into a stage 2. You can't do it the turn you play the Pokemon, or on turn 1 or any of that. But you can essentially play a Pokemon, and then when it would evolve, you go straight to the stage 2. You get the guaranteed stage 2. And you know what? In some decks where you're building around a stage 2 Pokemon, this is legitimately going to be a redonkulous card. But you are playing it instead of other ace specs. Like, there's no Prime Catcher if you're playing this, for argument's sake. So, great card. Love it. But it's only for stage 2 decks, and you've got to turn down other really good cards in terms of ace specs to play it. So, it's a bit of a weird one, but I think it's good enough to come in at number 10. In at number 9, we've got Galvantula. And Galvantula is one... I mean, look, it's seeing a bunch of play over in Japan right now. It is seeing a bunch of success over in Japan right now. And it's a very good card. I am skeptical as to whether it's going to be a real force in the metagame or whether it's going to remain as a fringe deck. But I think there is enough there that we need to be taking it a little bit seriously. Also, need to give a shout out here to Joltik. Joltik is ridiculous. Lets you go and search your deck for 2 lightning and 2 grass energy and attach them to your Pokemon. It's a ridiculous card. Absolutely absurd card. Accelerating 4 energy. Sure, it's probably going to get KO'd straight away, but we got cards that take advantage of that. I'm looking at you, Unfair Stamp, which I call Reset Stamp way too much in videos, but it is Unfair Stamp. So, you know what? I'm kind of alright with that. Because Galvantula is item lock. And putting your opponent down to a 2-card hand and then item locking them is hilarious. 2 energy, you do 110, but against an EX or V, it's 220. And 3 energy, you do 180. Stop your opponent playing item cards, but you have to discard all energy from this Pokemon. Which is really not the end of the world, because we've got stuff around like Glass Trumpet, for instance, which lets you attach a basic energy to 2 bench colorless Pokemon. And you can play this with, for instance, Blissey, that's got the ability to let you then move that energy. So you Glass Trumpet onto Blissey and then move it onto Galvantula. You can actually stream this. This is a streamable attack that does 180 damage, while also stopping your opponent playing item cards, and that's kind of amazing. Also, if you're playing this, do remember Power Glass from Shrouded Fable. At the end of your turn, you get to attach a basic energy from your discard pile. So it's free energy, but 1 Power Glass, 1 attach for turn, 1 Blissey, and oh look, now you're rolling again. I think this might actually work, and if it does, it's phenomenal. In at number 8, a pretty boring card, I'm afraid. It's Gravity Stone. It's not one of the big, fun new cards from the set, but it is a set which I expect to see a lot of play, and I do expect to have a pretty big impact. What Gravity Stone does is it increases the retreat cost of both active Pokemon by 1. Simple as that. But firstly, that can stop your opponent retreating. Secondly, you're prepared for it and your opponent isn't. Thirdly, we got a bunch of Pokemon around that take advantage of high retreat cost, etc. And frankly, it might not be an exciting card, but I do expect it to be a card which sees a lot of play. In at number 7, we've got Bouffalant, and this might actually end up being a little bit too low. Yes, this is one of the pre-release promos. Yes, it is the best of the pre-release promos. And I'm showing you the pre-release promo here because it's the only English print we've got at the time of making this video. And what Bouffalant's got is the ability Curly Wall. You need to have 2 Bouffalant in play. The ability doesn't stack, you only get 1. But if you've got 2 Bouffalant in play, all of your basic colourless Pokemon take 60 less damage from attacks. Now, I'm not saying it's all for Terrapagos. It's not all for Terrapagos. But Terrapagos is certainly going to love this. But then it does other little things like your Squawkabilly, which is generally not the hardiest Pokemon around, I think is a polite way to put it. Yeah, your Squawkabilly takes 60 less damage from attacks. So all of a sudden your Squawkabilly, which is just sitting there on the bench, is actually a lot harder for your opponent to KO, doesn't give up the easy prizes like it traditionally has, for instance. I like this. This is awesome. Coming in at number 6, we've got the aforementioned Terrapagos. I like Terrapagos. I think a lot of people like Terrapagos. This card could be nuts. You see, what we've got here is... Now, we got Crown Opal, free energy, 180, and prevent all damage by basic non-colourless Pokemon. And there are actually a lot of basic decks around right now that you can kind of take advantage of. Like Raging Bolt, for instance, seeing a lot of play right now. Great deck. Top deck in the format, one of them at least. Doesn't play any evolved Pokemon. So you can potentially use this to wall off some decks like that. Although I do think it is telling. If you look at the Terrapagos list coming out of Japan, yes, some of them absolutely are built in a way that can use this attack. Some of them aren't. Some of them are basically built just to take advantage of Unified Beatdown. Because, okay, you can't use it on turn 1 even if you go second, but it does 30 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. And we got the Stadium Area 0 Undernets, which lets you have 8 bench Pokemon. Fill your bench, that's 240 damage for 2 energy. That Glass Trumpet I mentioned a minute ago will accelerate energy onto you very nicely indeed. You've got your double turbo, which can work. There's a lot of options here, and it's a basic Pokemon, easy to get rolling, big damage, awesome. In at number 5, we've got Briar, and this, of all the cards on the list, this is the one I'm struggling with the most. Because it's clearly a great card and it sees a bunch of play, but I don't know if it should be down towards the bottom of the list, because it's occasional play in some decks, or pretty high up on the list because it still sees play in a bunch of decks and is incredibly impactful in the decks in which it sees play. I'm confused, ladies and gentlemen. I'm confused. But I can tell you that it lets you take an extra prize if you get a KO with a Terra Pokemon when your opponent's got exactly 2 prize cards remaining. And it's great. We see it seeing play in Charizard decks in Japan. We see it seeing play in Dragapult decks. Although you've got to take the damage with the attack, not the 6 damage counters you drop as a secondary effect of the attack. That is very important. It's only if you KO the active, not the dropping damage on the bench. You got to remember that. It can see play with Terrapagos. There are a lot of decks around that can take advantage of this. And sure, it's kind of a once per game kind of thing, but that's okay. Play it as a one-off, grab it when you need it, job's a good un. In at number 4, we've got Sparkling Crystal. I actually dropped this a space right before I started recording the video. I like Sparkling Crystal. It is the best A-Spec in the set, and it is a pretty impactful card. And what it does is it reduces the attack cost by 1 energy for a Terra Pokemon that it's attached to. And importantly, it is any energy. So I've already shown you Galvantula. That attack gets easier to pay. I've shown you Terrapagos. That attack gets easier to pay. But things like Dragapult, for instance, becomes a single energy attacker. This is a really good card that fits with a lot of really good decks. But one of the reasons I've dropped this down to number 4, and let's be clear, this could easily be a top 3 card in the set. One of the reasons I've dropped it down to number 4 is because even in Terra decks, and even in Terra decks that want to play this, it's your ace spec. And there are still going to be some builds of every deck that are just not willing to give up their ace spec to play this, no matter how good it can end up being, and that's why I ding it a tiny bit. Let's be clear, you're going to see a lot of this, and you're going to see it in a wide variety of decks. It is a phenomenal card, but I've just dropped it out the top 3 because even in the decks that love it, they're not all going to play it. But again, phenomenal card. In at number 3, we've got Glass Trumpet, and my theory here is incredibly simple. Item-based energy acceleration is always ridiculous. Okay, fine, Energy Sticker hasn't been ridiculous, but it's on a coin flip. And even then, we saw somebody have a good run with it at North American International, so, you know, that happened. But it accelerates 2 energy on an item card. And sure, it only accelerates 2 colorless Pokemon, but I've already mentioned Terrapagos, and we've got just an insane combo here with Blissey. Because you accelerate to Blissey, and then Blissey's got the Happy Switch ability that moves the basic energy from this to another. So if you've got a Blissey in play, this just attaches to anything, including your active Pokemon. This is a reason why something like Galvantula can actually work. It's the reason why Terrapagos is phenomenal. We've actually seen, because of this and Area 0 Underdepths, we're seeing a resurgence of Hisuian Zoroark, because that does damage based on the amount of damage bench Pokemon you've got. It's absurd. And to be fair, damage Pokemon doesn't just have to be bench. Point is, it's a great card, but it's not coming in at number 1 or number 2. In at number 2, we got Noctowl. Noctowl, remember, is our Elite Trainer Box promo for Stellar Crown, and it's so good I'm putting it in as a second best card in the set. That's how good it is. Noctowl's attack is garbage, but the ability Jewel Seeker says that when you evolve into this, you search your deck for 2 trainer cards. It is a stage 1 that searches for 2 trainer cards. Drizzile saw a redonkulous amount of play in a redonkulous amount of decks, and it was a stage 1 that searched for 1 trainer card. This goes and gets 2. It's ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely ridiculous. This is going to see an absurd amount of play in an absurd amount of decks. Yeah. That's all you need to know. Searching out 2 trainer cards is ridiculous. This is a new engine, and engines are always incredibly valuable. Yeah, sure, it's a stage 1, and once you evolve into it, you've done what you're going to do. I don't even really care about that, honestly, because by the time you've searched out your 2 trainer cards, you've gotten your advantage here. And yet it's still not number 1. Number 1 is Area 0 Underdepths. And even given all the ridiculous cards I've shown you on this list, some of you might be thinking, well, you know, it might be pretty close. Nah, mate, it's not close. Area 0 Underdepths, best card in the set. And I feel very, very good about this being the best card in the set. I think it's absurd. I think it's ridiculous. I think it is absolutely one of the very, 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 very best cards in the game. It lets you have 8 bench Pokemon. Now, partly this means that you can just have more options, and that's good. But Terrapagos becomes ridiculous with this because of the damage you can do. Hisuian Zoroark becomes much, much better with this because of the damage you can do. When this dropped, Palkia V-Star instantly became one of the best decks in the format because it does damage based on the amount of bench Pokemon you've got. And this lets you have more bench Pokemon and your opponent as well. I saw Miraidon decks winning in Japan, playing Terra Mewtwo, so that they could use this stadium, because you've got to have a Terra Pokemon out to use it, so that they could then go and do more damage with Raikou. Because again, it's an attack that does damage based on the amount of bench Pokemon that's in play. It's absurd. Ridiculous card. I'm calling it number 1. And yeah, maybe over time, Noctowl becomes better or something along those lines. Right now, I do feel pretty confident calling this number 1. But hey, there's a comment section. Come and argue with me down there. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely William Shaw, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.